Hello, everyone. A warm welcome to our webinar, Best Practices in Enterprise Training with Augmented Reality. This is part of a larger webinar series where we will focus on real-world implementations of AR and connected devices within the enterprise with input from experts across industries. So we can get started. I am Laura Farbo, based in Augmate's Amsterdam office, and will be your host today. I'm happy to be joined by leading experts in enterprise augmented reality. This includes Fraser Bowie from Verizon, Percy Stalker from UbiMax, Alex Kelly from Vuzix, and our own Peter Orban from Augmate. This webinar centers around a project where all 4 organizations were involved, and the goal is to demonstrate the learnings and necessity of collaboration to launch a successful augmented reality training program. Our panelists can draw a lot of experience in delivering AR solutions for an array of use cases, and we look forward to hearing their insights on this project. Just as a reminder, if the audience has any questions, please add them into the question box, and we'll try to get to them at the end of the webinar. I'd like to now hand it over and ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves and provide some insight into their roles and organizations. Fraser, can we start with you?
Thanks, Laura. Hi, my name's Fraser Bowie. I am with Verizon and actually in the learning and development team in Verizon. You can move to the next slide. My role has been in Verizon as a technology leader in the learning and development group. So my team and my role is not to bring technology to learning and development, but actually to solve learning and development problems or challenges and look for innovative technologies that could help solve them. Verizon, as you know, as many of you may know, is a leading communications company. So we train people across a broad spectrum of folks, from retail employees to technicians out in the field, to those working on testing equipment and testing our network here in the U.S., to those working the backbone of the internet across the globe. So we're a global organization that has a lot of different folks, and with this we focused on our field technicians here in the U.S. We can move to the next slide. So one of the challenges that came up, and we'll discuss it a little bit later, but really was how do we help these field technicians increase their safety, reduce their training time, improve their response time, and reduce errors on the job. So this is something that's costly to Verizon around the globe, and so we've been looking for innovative solutions for these things. And what we'll discuss throughout today, and working with our partners, UbiMax and Vuzix and Augmate, we came up with a solution really through AR to really help these folks work through each one of these issues. And with that, I will hand it off.
All right, thank you very much, Fraser. Now if we can pass it to you, Percy.
Hi, this is Percy speaking here. I'm with the company UbiMax, and I'm responsible for the Americas business here at UbiMax. And in this crowd today, we're the software company in that space, along with Augmate. And so what is UbiMax all about? UbiMax is about helping companies like Verizon optimize their manual labor processes and improve them in terms of speed and efficiency and performance and quality, and not to forget, really, to make the life easier for the workers. So not only the companies have to be in the focus, but the actual workers need to be in the focus to make their life a little bit easier, as they are kind of confronted with a ever-changing and getting more and more complex environment. And so the use cases that we will be talking about today mainly is about service and maintenance and remote support, which are 2 very critical activities, especially for Verizon, and this is how they use it. And in the beginning, I would just like to stress that this is not limited to that, but it's rather a quite complex shift along the whole supply chain, really. And it starts out in logistics somehow, where you have people in the organization moving goods from A to B, inbound logistics, cycle counting, picking operations, outbound logistics. Then you do some line side delivery. Also there you have people touching goods that need to have the right information to make the assembly processes happen. They want to do quality assurance, so they want to use the camera and the devices to take pictures and videos of what they actually did to confirm it actually happened. And then once you have the assets out in the field, you have your service and maintenance operations, and then you need to do relatively similar things in assembly, step-by-step instruction on how to do maintenance on things and do some quality assurance. And then you want to collaborate across the whole supply chain as well with the experts, with the workers out in the field among them, with all of these different things. So you can see that it's a pretty broad phenomenon. And what is UBMax bringing to the table is the software to it, and you can see it kind of like what Microsoft Office did for the desk space. UBMax is doing for the deskless worker space. We would provide an end-to-end solution with the same look and feel across all these different scenarios. I don't want to talk too much about UBMax. We have this pretty comprehensive portfolio, the biggest one out there really in terms of supporting different use cases. You saw that on the previous slide. We're pretty big and coverage around the globe with locations in Europe, in North America, also Latin America, and partnerships for the Asian region. So we're a truly global company. We have the biggest customer footprint with 250 enterprises that we work for, and quite a bit of experience, and I'm happy to share some of that on our call today. Thank you.
Thank you, Percy. And on to you, Alex.
Thanks, Laura, and good morning and afternoon to everyone on the call. My name is Alex, and I am with Vuzix, leading innovation and strategic partnership. So a little bit of background on Vuzix. We've been in the wearable display industry for about 20 years with a variety of different wearable display technologies, and kind of over the last 5 years or so, really focusing on smart glasses and augmented reality. We're headquarters in Rochester, New York, with offices globally in Europe as well as Japan. And you can see on the right-hand side some of our key customers and partners. So over the last 20 years, and kind of what we're going to get into in this webinar is the ecosystem in the augmented reality industry. So Vuzix has been working and developing partnerships with software companies, different augmented reality technologies, as well as end customers, and really building that ecosystem over the last 20 years. You can go ahead and flip to the next slide, please. So Vuzix has two product lines that are offered in the marketplace right now. We have our Vuzix M300, and that is our pair of smart glasses really aimed for the industrial market. So you can look there and see the key enterprise verticals that we target with this pair of glasses is warehouse and logistics, field service, quality control, and manufacturing. Our second pair of glasses, a newer pair to the market and named a little bit different vertical segment, is the Vuzix Blade. This pair of glasses is a little bit more for front of the house applications, in-store picking. You can think of some different use cases where you need a little bit better or different form factor of pair of glasses. Both of our glasses are built on Android operating systems. And again, we work with a variety of the different software partners, including UBMax, Augmate out there for their software solutions to work tightly integrated with our glasses. Most up there. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Alex. And last but not least, Peter, on to you.
Thank you so much. So we are Augmate, and what we bring to the party is a wearable first, but mobile-friendly device management platform. In our emerging space, we meet a lot of wearable curious, for a lack of better expression, curious people who are new to our domain. So perhaps no wonder frequently we see MDMs or mobile device management platforms and WDMs or wearable device management platforms get mixed up. After all, you may see silicon architectures or operating systems familiar from the mobile world, but what's not obvious is how different things can be, as evidenced by this quote from a recent technical report authored by our friends at the area, the Augmented Reality for Enterprise Alliance. So we characterize these differences the following ways. One, the handheld device / app universe is converging, becoming more alike every year with every cycle. Think about the notch, if you will. But ours is diverging, bringing new devices and new variations of apps to market all the time. Since we're still as a business, we're still working out many of the use cases. And this case, just like as you have seen with our friends at Vuzix, when you look at the M300 and the Blade, they are quite different. Second is the economic incentive. If the business model of a device management platform is built on the assumption of a large number of similar, if not identical devices, handling exceptions like wearables is expensive. This could mean an economic disincentive to support this new device class. Third is it also impacts system architectures. We designed our platform to handle the widest, most diverse range of devices and applications known today, and that is the universe of Internet of Things. Wearable devices are a subset of IoT, so we are well architected to handle this growing diversity. And finally, most customers of ours already have some trusted device management platform and sometimes prefer to go with a single gatekeeper, which is good news because we integrate with everyone. Next slide, please. So these experiences and learnings did not come easy. We've been at this now for over half a decade, starting out on the app development side as a Google Glass partner. Today we have R&D and product in Silicon Valley, commerce and support in New York and Amsterdam, and engineering in New Delhi. With this, back to you, Laura.
Great, thank you, Peter. So diving right into why everyone is here today, Fraser, could you start us off with an overview of the project and what you were hoping to achieve?
Sure. So thanks again, Laura. Our project was, as I mentioned before, focused around our field tech folks here in the U.S. So we focused on our wireline, so our copper and fiber network technicians that are both in our central office as well as out in the field. Our goal really was, what we found was, again, how can we reduce errors, how can we improve safety, and really get the information they need at the moment of need. And so we provided headsets and software to 50 reps across the Northeast of the United States. So as far up as the Massachusetts area, all the way down to the Virginia area. And we had a mixture of managers, so those that are responsible for some of the outdoor field tech reps, some outdoor field tech reps, as well as the indoor central office tech that really work on the equipment where all the fiber and copper terminate. So our goal really was to see, one, will this technology help reduce errors, help increase productivity, and really provide the information they need in a safe way. Today they do a lot of training in the classroom, hands-on training. Go out, they'll have iPads or laptops in which a lot of this information is on, and they do either a lot of swivel chair or holding, kind of one-handed sort of work by holding the tablet and other things and doing things. And where perhaps in a place like a central office or somewhere where they can bring a cart over and lay things down, it is safe and easy. It's still a bit of swivel chair time consumption, but also it in more of the outdoor space where someone has to go down a manhole or has to go up a telephone pole, there's the safety issue. We don't want them using phones or tablets or anything in those environments. They have to take themselves out of those environments. So how can we use this to do that? So, where we saw the simple work instructions work, it was in that, whether it was that task that they do on a regular basis as a new hire, but we don't have time to train in their new hire, or whether it is that task that they don't do as often, but often enough where if they didn't have the work instructions, they would need to call for help, right? So we want to try to avoid that. Another place where we saw great success was in the see what I see. So we want to avoid having two people do one person's job. We saw some great success in, for instance, again with new hires. So we've trained these folks, we put them out. Typically, um, we will spend some time having them being shadowed by a manager. So maybe their first 2 or 3 weeks, the manager is following them around and helping them and working through them. We went out and saw, could we provide them both the work instructions and the ability to call their manager in those first 2 or 3 weeks without needing somebody to be there. We did see some success there. We think there's great potential there because now that'll frees up the manager to perhaps mentor 2 or 3 people, but also allow them to continue on doing their responsibilities in their job. And then, one of the key things that we did in this was we really wanted to encourage our users to explore what the technology could do and what the possibility was. So what was great is we got a lot of feedback, not just on the stuff that we gave them to do and the use cases that we provided them, but on additional use cases. In fact, some of the things that we saw, they just, one of the completely unexpected things was a new hire came in. They're talking to their manager, doing their stuff in 2 separate locations. They get their computer and everything to set it up, and they realize they don't know what to do. Right? We give people computers all the time. There's a bunch of stuff there. The manager's not in the location. So even though this seems simple, how do you set up your laptop and get it right? What the manager was able to do was able to walk them through using the AR headset just to set up their laptop and be ready to do it remotely, because if not, it would have been what took probably 15 minutes to do could have taken 2 or 3 hours to do because the manager would have to complete what they were doing, travel to the location, sit down and work through it with the user and all that. So again, not something we ever went after, right? It wasn't working on equipment on the network. It wasn't working with a mentor on just making sure things are right or doing quality assurance. It was just doing that, and it saved a whole lot of time. So by allowing them to explore where they could use it and not restricting them on how or why they use it, it really helped us learn a lot more and give us a lot more use cases going forward.
That's great. This actually leads me into my next question. So why is it important to create modern training methods with AR? And Fraser, I'll actually send that back to you.
Sure. So with, again, a couple of the goals, as we had mentioned before, is really, focused around the safety and the knowledge and things like that. So we have in our facility in Virginia a really good hands-on training facility. We have pole yards where they learn how to climb poles. We have a central office built out where they can actually work on the equipment. We do a lot of very hands-on training. But as you can imagine with new hires, there's only a certain amount of time that we can train them, and then we have to let them out to the field. So we're not necessarily able to train them on everything in the classroom, and there'll be things that we can't train them on that are fairly common. There'll also be things throughout their career or throughout their time where a piece of equipment will change, which won't be a drastic change, but a big enough change where they'll have to learn it differently. So one of the things that we felt was crucial to include here, not just to save the time and the error reduction and improved safety was how can we reduce that classroom training time, or how can we supplement it with work instructions on the job. So if we start them in the training class, using this hardware, using this software, really understanding it, when we get them out into the field, they can just continue to use it. It just is another tool in their toolbox. But being able to deliver some of those things that we couldn't fit in that 2 or 3 weeks of training to them in their headset is crucial. And then also being able to just give them that, as I mentioned before, that ability to have a mentor without having them sitting next to each other and focused on that. Another thing that we thought was key to our success, or I should say key to the challenges that we're dealing with today that can help in this is the aging workforce. So, as you can imagine, certainly when it comes to copper, but we're the telephone company in many ways. We have a lot of copper equipment. We have even with our wireless equipment and our copper equipment, it changes our fiber. It changes, technology changes fairly quickly. So with some of the equipment like the copper stuff that may be there for quite a while, that workforce that installed it or worked on it on a regular basis is starting to age out and retire. And so we wanted to make sure that we're able to not only perhaps give them the ability, those folks the ability to document some of the processes and procedures using these headsets, right? Because now you're getting point of view video, you're getting images of how things are set up, that sort of thing, but also allow them to help, again, mentor a case where we had a technician that actually spent a week in a hotel working on upgrading some of this older equipment through software stuff and that sort of stuff, but he had to travel there and work through it. And so that gave us the thought of, well, we can save that travel time, that because it can, maybe the first time he travels and he documents it and now it's available, or he doesn't even need to travel initially because the team there is fully capable of doing it. They're just not as familiar with it. And, the other thing that I would say is key to starting to introduce this in the training and all that, AR has, it's probably moving faster in the business and the enterprise side, but AR is starting to more and more enter into our everyday life, right? And we've certainly learned over the years in training is, if it's good enough for you at home to do something, it should be good enough for you at work as well. So certainly as we're bringing in younger staff and newer folks and more tech savvy folks that are starting to use this and hearing a lot about AR, and I mean, even as simple, right, as Pokemon Go, or the IKEA catalog of dropping a piece of furniture in a room, as they start to get used to that more and more, we have to adapt to that. We can't continue to keep our classroom instructor-led and using the same technologies, much like we did with video training or moving away from binders and things like that, that AR is getting to the point where we need to continue to bring that through.
Perfect. So thank you, Fraser. So I will move on to our next question. What are the critical points to consider before beginning a pilot? So Alex, if you could start us off on this question.
Sure, thanks, Laura. I think Fraser had a really good point in his introduction. If you look at kind of back what he said, he mentioned his job's not about bringing new technology to training, but more of looking at the training procedure, trying to solve some of the challenges that they have and finding the right technology for that. So I think one of the key aspects to starting a pilot or thinking about where to start is really defining a use case driven solution. One of the challenges often with new technology is, it's talked about a lot. There's a lot of promises for it. So a lot of people want to get the technology and then try to find a way to use that in the business. And really for successful pilots, like you're hearing about here, it's kind of the opposite way around. It's trying to solve a business problem and then going to find the right technology. So I think that's the best advice that we see when looking to start a pilot, is really focus on what is the use case that you're trying to solve, and drive the technology back from that. And along with that, I think the other key piece of advice to consider when looking at a pilot is, there's a lot of different options out there, especially in the augmented reality and smart glasses industry. There's a lot of different hardware vendors, a lot of different software vendors, and they all have their different pros and cons. And it's really important to look at what is the right technology for the solution. Here you heard Fraser talking about the workers out in the field. They needed a pair of glasses that they could wear all day long, a wearable solution, a light solution, one that's going to last in a more ruggedized situation as you're climbing a telephone pole. So from our perspective, that's where the M300 is a great fit. It's that lightweight pair of glasses that you can bring out into the field. It'll last you all day long, and it can handle that rugged environment. But there's also use cases where, for example, if you're looking at putting the furniture, the IKEA furniture in your room, or you're in a store where you're interfacing with consumers more often, that's where we see our Vuzix Blade as a better fit. So again, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Our M300 is not going to be the perfect solution for every problem out there in industry. So it's really looking at what is the problem and then identifying the right solutions. And I think this is evident across different pilots out there. I was on a panel a couple months back at a wearable technology conference, and there was someone doing a training situation, but their training was primarily in a classroom, and they were using VR. And a great point here to show that not one size fits all for the hardware and software. They were using 3 or 4 different hardware solutions in the VR space to solve that one problem. So again, I think the 2 points that we really stress when companies are starting pilots are: start with your business case, your problem, and work backwards to the technology, and then understand and look at the different technology out there in the field and understand what is the right hardware, software, and tools combination to solve that problem.
Great, thank you, Alex. Percy, did you have any comments?
Yes, that was actually a very good point to start from the business problem. This is how we also developed our solution stack here, because we always took a look at what problems do the companies really have, and then we developed a turnkey solution for that. And so the challenge that we saw with that, and sometimes the challenge the companies also have, is that there is sometimes expectation that get raised by video material or believes what the technology should be able to do. SAP did some great groundwork in the early days, 4 or 5 years ago, when they brought out the warehouse picker and service technician videos. And especially for the warehouse picker, the augmented reality that we see in the video is something that is cool, but maybe not 100% realistic with the current technology. And so it's first about understanding your business problem, and then also understanding the capabilities of the technology today, and seeing that the technology using the M300, for example, can already take you 80% of the way, even without doing the graphical overlays and having the hands-free experience. And that's why my first point is really understand the technical capabilities, and then select a solution in line with what this technology can do for you today. The second thing is more of a change management kind of aspect. It's very important, and Verizon did a great job in that, is including the right stakeholders right from the beginning. In Europe, we have the Gewerkschaften, and here we have the workers union, and they have a very important task. They need to make sure that their workers have good working conditions, and their work is made easier. So whatever solution should be selected, it should be something that makes their work easier, makes their life easier, but they also want to be included. And it's a big difference if you kind of tell them, okay, we have this new technology, you want to try it out and see if it's helpful for you, like Verizon did it, or buying a set of glasses and saying, okay, tomorrow you're going to use that. There's a big difference in tone there. And so that's important to include these people, to have them not left behind. And the third thing, I think, when you kick off a pilot is you not only should think about the functional requirements, like doing a call, but you also need to think about the non-functional requirements, like security. What kind of encryption do we have? Can we go into the cloud with that solution, or do we need to go on premise to have it in our network, in our data centers? So these non-functional requirements are very critical as well, and they may haunt you later on in the process if you get those wrong. So this would be kind of my take on that.
Great, thank you, Percy. And actually, for our next question, how much do partnerships matter for a successful pilot and launch? I was handing that back over to you, Percy.
And thank you very much. So the solution is only as strong as a combination of all the different elements that need to be involved to make it successful. So you need to have the right piece of hardware. Then you need to obviously have a software solution, and then you also need to make sure that you're able to handle the devices, like in a device management kind of way. And so you really need to think about what the best combination is here to solve your problem. And here in the case with Verizon, we had a very powerful combination coming together with the M300 from Vuzix as the hardware, then Augmate delivering a device management platform that allows easy provisioning and management of the devices, and then our solution platform, which now allows Verizon to do the work instructions and also do the remote assistance, and in the future at some point in time maybe also help them to handle some of the logistics work as well. So having the right combination out of these elements is quite critical, because if only one piece doesn't fit, it can ruin is maybe the wrong, or maybe too strong of a word, but it can really screw up the whole user experience, and may lead to a perception where the technology is perceived not to be market ready, even though it is, but just because we didn't get one of these elements right. And so behind the scenes, we at UBMX, we work quite a bit with all our different partners in making sure that when, for example, a new hardware iteration comes out, we started out using the M100 some time back, then M300 was introduced, the Vuzix Blade is the next one here now. So we always make sure to work very closely with Vuzix to make sure that we support the latest hardware and optimize our software for that use. And that's why the partnerships, not only during a project like that when you executed it, but also beforehand in the preparations, are very critical to make it a success, and to make the solutions run perfectly and generate the best user experience, and then also the benefits for the business in the end. So I want to kind of finish up here with 4 success factors that we identified when companies came to us and they were kind of asking for help on what kind of the best solution is. The first thing I would always recommend, pick a turnkey solution. Pick something that has been done before in a similar context that's validated, and so you can deploy it quickly at affordable cost and low risk. So the first thing is turnkey solution. The second thing is make sure that whatever you have, it's extendable across your whole supply chain. So that's more of a strategic thing. Strategically, don't lock yourself in a corner by picking a point solution that limits you in some kind of space, either by a hardware device that can only do a limited number of things, or by a software solution that cannot cover the whole supply chain. The third thing is make sure that you're empowered, that you're in the driver's seat, so that you have possibilities in a self-service kind of way to grow at your own pace and produce content. We have the UBMX Creator, for example, that allows you to do that, which doesn't mean UBMX needs to be involved in all the activities, but you can kind of develop your content on your own and scale at your own pace. And the fourth thing is really make sure it fits in your infrastructure, in your architecture, that you have an on-premise or cloud deployment, different depending on your preferences. and you can integrate into the backend systems that you have in your organization. So integration is the fourth piece. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Percy. Do any of the panelists have additional comments?
Yeah, Laura, this is Alex. I'll have just quick addition to what Percy mentioned. From our perspective as the hardware provider, the industry is moving very quick. We're constantly iterating on the hardware, providing new technology. Software partners like Augmate have a wide variety of applications, from logistics to the work instructions to the video streaming. They're constantly innovating. Augmate as well, looking at new ways to manage the devices. So as everybody's moving very quickly, it's very important to have those communications, even as Percy said, before a project, before the pilot gets kicked off. It's important to be constantly communicating with each other to understand how each company is changing the solution and how we can all work together to make sure that the solution will fit together. And then also, as the pilot gets going, Max, Augmate are out working with the customers day in, day out. So it's important for us to have that communication with them as they're seeing different feedback from the customer on what is working well, what some enhancements that might need to be made. We get those funneled back into our business so we can work on that going forward to continue to iterate and improve that experience for the customer. So again, if you look at the industry, there's a lot of different components out there, from the software providers, the device management, even different tools of interactions with the devices, and then a lot of different hardware out there. And you can't have a complete solution if one of those pieces is missing. So it's important for all of those pieces to come together and work closely. And I think this has been a great use case and pilot here, where a showcase of how we've all worked very closely together to help Verizon as they go through this pilot.
All right, thank you, Alex. Any additional comments?
Yeah, and just real quick, I can't stress enough the partnership of these three companies here with us. I mean, we made sure we were being very agile in our pilot. We wanted to iterate as we went, and all of the partners here really just helped us do that, from making sure we were discussing changes to potential hardware or just issues that we were finding to see what we could do, and to Ubimax and Percy working with us on hey, they came up with this use case, what can we do with the software? Can we come up with something to do that? And the same thing with Augmate. We work very closely on just different things, and being able to trial different ways of securing and not securing and all that, the headset. So I think partnership is huge when you're doing this, because each case is unique, and it's only helping everyone by sharing as much of the findings as possible.
Right. Great. So I will then move on to the next question. How to avoid pilot purgatory. So Peter, let's start with you.
Thank you so much. Pilot purgatory, one of the dreaded terms we hear in this business ever and ends. And so before answering the question, just let me state the obvious. Why is it important to avoid? And the obvious part is, of course, that everyone gets involved, invested in this project, from a vendor side, from the customer side, time, effort, the exposure, credibility, and so on and so forth. So that needs to be converted. But probably more importantly, what we see is, or what we refer to, is moving from efficiency to efficacy. So why is this important? We see that AR and wearables in general impact the enterprise in two distinct ways, influencing efficiency and efficacy. Efficiency tends to be instinctive, as Fraser was describing the use cases. You see, it's fairly easy to see if someone has an access to the device and the right software running on that. It will cut down on time, it will increase productivity, it will remove or eliminate or decrease mistakes or errors, and so on and so forth. And that's the beauty of that is it's easy to frame and easy to measure. Evidently, in pilots, this dreaded ROI question comes up, and so we see in many cases that that's the way where you can go to management and say, you see how it compares how it was before and how it is today. But the real impact, or even bigger impact, is the efficacy state. And again, going back to Fraser's point, that those are the discoveries that you make when you start working with devices. You know, as he pointed out, we had some idea as to how to deploy these, but turns out life is different, and people found even better ways of making even a bigger impact, which is something that you could not have planned for in the pilot or the earlier stages of pilot. So that's why it's important to convert, because you find gains that you didn't even know you could have. So with this, here are a couple of practical sort of consideration for avoiding pilot purgatory. First is to include and parallel track IT to minimize the impact of transition, right? So we see frequently that customers get excited, and the organization gets excited for that matter, and people want to get out in the field quickly, and may cut a few corners or just want to rush and may not involve their friends at IT. And of course, at some point, these devices will have to go into the network we have to be properly provisioned, and your friends in IT will look at you and say, you should have talked to us earlier. This is not an necessarily easy exercise. This is a new device class. So although the business unit is the primary beneficiary, please recognize that IT is an enabler, an important enabler, and support from day one is critical. The other one is that they are likely already know this technology. I mean, talk to your IT folks and look for the guys who, the gamers or the drone pilots or those who are mining bitcoins. I mean, those are their ahead, and you probably will have heard of this. Likely will know maybe even better than you do. So they will love to help you actually. And then it is also helpful if you pick a device management platform that plays nice with the rest of the stack, that's already in the organization. The second observation is design KPIs that integrate with your units, right? So you might find that these devices will bring benefits that you didn't know you could have. And so important to the design KPIs that capture that, but of course they will have to integrate with the larger KPIs of the business that unit. But as I pointed out earlier, it makes sense to kind of divide pilots into multiple stages. One stage we refer to as a proof of concept, when the users actually figure out what exactly is the use case or what else could be the use case. And actual pilot part, which is all about data collection, so that will feed your financial or other model that proves out the utility of the deployment. And lastly, as many of the other speakers pointed out, it is about change management, and it actually makes sense to let champions self-select. You will see that the people will respond to this technology like any other technology differently, and we almost see this sort of one-third rule, that there will be 1/3 of the population that will instinctively jump on the bandwagon, and they will like it. And as Fraser mentioned, they may be more technically savvy, may even skew younger, this and that. And there will be a group of people that will have a hard time with this, and you have to manage them as well. And then there's this sort of the swing group in between that may be sitting on the fence, and we see them as very critical. This and as consciously targeting them, so to speak, in terms of easing their anxieties or helping them understand the benefits, is going to disproportionately contribute to the overall success to this in the enterprise. And then lastly but not least, as I said, the self-selection helps. You will see there will always be, when you put on one of these devices and just walk around in the company, you'll get a lot of questions, you will turn a lot of heads, and that alone will help you identify those who might be interested. So a couple of the practical recommendations as to how to avoid pilot purgatory.
Thank you, Peter. And actually, I just have one question to that last note. Is there a specific function within the organization that should really lead the AR journey?
So it really depends on the culture of the organization. Some organizations more IT-led, some are more business unit-led. The benefit of augmented reality tends to be captured on a business unit level. But frequently, it's IT who has the budget and the capacity to be able to run with that. So it's kind of a non-answer answer that you'll have to know your organization's culture and see where it is the easiest to make the case or where the budget may sit. But if in doubt, default to IT.
Okay, great. So keeping in mind our timing as we're currently over, I'd like to ask one more question. What was your one key takeaway from this project? Or perhaps what is your key piece of advice for the audience? So Fraser, if we could start with you.
Yeah, so, it's, again, don't lead with technology, but then when you bring it in, remember who your customer is, right? So from a user experience perspective, from just a user and the customer that you're working with, they're the key. They're the ones that are going to drive the adoption or not. And this isn't, in many ways, isn't your typical project. A lot of the projects that I've worked on, a lot of the projects I think when we think about technology, it's very software driven. It's very, let's give them a better tool. Let's give them this sort of thing. Even with, let's say, smartphones and bringing them into the business, it was something that we're using. Let's just bring it in. This is as much about the user interacting with the hardware as it is interacting with the software, and it's as much about them driving what the use cases could be. So, for instance, the example I gave of just how to set up your laptop, like we would never have come up with that use case. If you look at the goals, it certainly solved for some of the goals. It solved for time for being more productive and getting the user ready faster, and not needing them to train on documentation or create documentation on how to set up their laptop. But it was never something we went after. So how really make sure that the user and the customer you're going after with this technology is at the forefront, because they will make or break the success. And interacting with the hardware is as important as interacting with the software and the content that is there.
Right. Thank you, Fraser. And off to you, Percy.
Well, my key takeaway was, if you have been in the space for so long as we have, and we've spent so many years really building these turnkey solutions in the platform, and we've seen it really transform from a project-based industry where you would do something individual for companies to a standardized software product where we could see that our out-of-the-box solution, and we really didn't change anything for this project for Verizon. They used our out-of-the-box solution. And from what I had the feeling, Fraser was pretty happy with what he got out of it, and they were able to do all the things that they wanted to do, and do a lot of work themselves by configuring it in a way that they needed it. So we've come a long way, and it's a good proof point that we did our homework, and we've come from custom coding really to have a standard software platform that can be readily deployed. And obviously that can be tailored and integrated into backend systems, and there can be adjustments made to it, but you can start out with a turnkey solution very quickly. So that's kind of my takeaway. And in terms of the key advice, coming back to that pilot purgatory, I think it's important to ask yourself before you start 2 questions. The first thing is, how will we tell if this pilot was a success? So think before what needs to happen for you to say, wow, that's cool, we want to continue. And then answer the second question also beforehand, what will be the next steps after, if this project has been a success? So how will we continue? So we will have kind of a plan mapped out before you dive into it, which will allow you to draw much bigger benefits from any pilot activities and then derive very concrete actions based on it.
Thank you, Percy. Can we go on to you, Alex?
Sure. I think one of the important takeaways I saw from this project is exactly what Percy just talked about, the solutions have matured, both hardware, software, so much over the years that, for example, Verizon was able to use the out-of-the-box solution from Bootmax to get going and deliver a great pilot. So I think that's one of the key takeaways is you see a lot of different material out there in the augmented reality space about what's coming and what's the next device out there, the next software out there. And that can cause some hesitation for some companies, but I think it's important to realize that, you know, the current state of the hardware, the software is very mature, and you can drive a lot of value from what's out there today. So don't get stuck on the thought that I'll wait for the next thing, because the industry is moving fast. There's always going to be the next new technology out there in this industry, but what's out there today can drive a lot of value for enterprises currently. So just pick your use case and find the right technology and get started today.
Great. So then lastly with you, Peter.
Thank you. So paraphrase a well-known term, so just do it. And the reason for that is even out of the box, on average, we see impact ranging from 25 to 75%. So there's the size of the prize is so big that you cannot not justify not kicking off experimentation. But talking about experimentation, know that things will change. So you need a strong bench strength, a strong team that is working with you who understands this space and knows that things will change and then can work with you on that.
All right. So unfortunately, we do not have time for Q&A. However, I would encourage all the attendees to reach out directly to the panelists. Thank you very much, Fraser, Percy, Alex, and Peter. This was extremely insightful, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.